Have you ever wondered why the people who seem most awake, most conscious, are quietly disappearing from society? They aren't vanishing in the literal sense. Their bodies are still here, but it's as if they've stepped out of the collective noise. You no longer see them arguing online, chasing trends, or defending ideas that don't belong to them. It's like they've turned down the volume of the world and tuned in to a different frequency, one that few can hear. At first glance, it might seem like isolation, but Abraham Maslow would have called it something else. Self-transcendence, the stage beyond self-actualization, where a person no longer seeks approval, success, or belonging within the existing structures, but begins to live from an entirely new center. Maslow noticed that when people reached the highest levels of growth, they often became more contemplative, less motivated by external rewards, and more attuned to truth itself. And that truth, once seen, cannot be unseen. Society is built on certain invisible contracts: to consume, to compete, to conform. The spiritually awakened individual begins to notice how fragile those contracts really are. They see how much of our behavior is driven not by freedom but by fear. Fear of being different, of being misunderstood, of being alone. But awakening, by its very nature, breaks those chains. The irony is that awakening doesn't make people superior, it simply makes them unable to lie to themselves anymore. Once the curtain is lifted, pretending becomes impossible. Maslow believed that every human being carries a natural drive toward wholeness, what he called the tendency toward growth. Yet most people get stuck in the lower stages of his hierarchy: survival, security, belonging, esteem. These stages are not wrong, but they are incomplete. When someone begins to transcend them, society often misinterprets that movement as withdrawal, laziness, or rebellion. But in truth, it is integration. It is the soul reclaiming its right to exist without conditions. Perhaps you felt it too, that quiet pull away from the chaos. Maybe you've noticed how empty conversations feel when they lack depth, or how strange it is to participate in a world that rewards masks more than authenticity. You're not broken for feeling that way. You're simply waking up. You're moving from a world of roles to a world of essence. This shift is not easy. It can feel like losing everything: friends, routines, even a sense of identity. But what's really happening is not loss, it's purification. You're shedding the parts of yourself that were never truly yours. Maslow once said that the fully developed person is not separate from the world, but deeply connected to it, only now through love, not obligation. To reach that point, one must pass through the loneliness of awakening, the silence that separates illusion from truth. If you've ever felt that distance, that quiet detachment from the noise of modern life, then this journey is already yours. Stay with me. Together, we'll explore what it truly means to awaken, and why, for many, that awakening demands stepping away from everything they once knew. Imagine you're walking through a forest. The trees are dense, their leaves whispering in the wind, and the path before you is both inviting and mysterious. There's a feeling of serenity, but also an underlying tension, as though you're on the verge of discovering something monumental, yet hidden. The deeper you go, the more disconnected you feel from the world you left behind. The sounds of civilization fade into nothingness. The weight of your past, your expectations, your fears, your societal roles starts to feel irrelevant, like old clothes that no longer fit. In this space, you begin to realize that the world you knew may not have been the world at all. Maslow spoke of self-actualization as the peak of human potential, but what happens once we reach that summit? It's easy to assume that all our desires, once fulfilled, would lead to a contented life, but the reality is far more complex. Maslow's hierarchy is not a simple staircase to happiness. It's an intricate dance, and beyond self-actualization lies a journey that challenges even the most grounded individuals. When people awaken spiritually, they aren't just transcending personal goals or material pursuits. They're breaking free from the very foundations of the world they've built for themselves. This idea of transcendence is not a new one. Throughout history, philosophers, mystics, and psychologists have tried to articulate this elusive shift. Abraham Maslow understood that the self-actualized person doesn't just thrive in the world. They see it differently. They're no longer driven by survival instincts or the need to conform. They see beyond the surface, recognizing the limitations of the world's structures, and as their consciousness expands, so too does their ability to perceive a different kind of truth, one that doesn't require validation from anyone but themselves. In fact, Maslow's concept of self-transcendence was heavily influenced by his studies of peak experiences. Moments when individuals felt deeply connected to something greater than themselves, whether it be nature, art, or love. These experiences weren't just emotional highs, they were profound shifts in perception, offering a glimpse into a reality that transcended the mundane. In those moments, people reported feelings of deep peace and belonging, not to a specific group, but to the universe itself. But the challenge with awakening, particularly in our current society, is that it goes against the grain. We live in a world built on norms, expectations, and performance. The societal contract is simple: succeed, conform, and fit in. Yet, for those who are awakening, this system becomes suffocating. The more they see, the less they can participate. It's not that they reject the world. They simply realize it's not real in the way they once thought. Society, as we know it, operates on a series of illusions designed to keep us distracted, divided, and driven by fear. And when someone begins to see through these illusions, they begin to question everything: their job, their relationships, their very purpose in life. This is the essence of spiritual awakening. Not rejection of the world, but a realization of something more profound. It's a shift in consciousness that cannot be explained away by logic or material success. It's a calling that begins as a whisper, urging you to look beyond the surface. And for many, it's a call that demands solitude, reflection, and detachment from the noise. It's a paradox, really. The more connected you become to your true self, the more disconnected you feel from the world around you. Maslow's theory of self-actualization teaches us that true freedom comes from within. It's not about escaping society or running away from responsibility, but rather freeing ourselves from the constraints of our own minds. And in doing so, we can step into a life of authenticity and purpose. Yet this journey isn't without its challenges. The more we wake up, the more we realize that we've been living in a dream. And as we begin to peel away the layers of illusion, we are faced with the unsettling question: who are we without the masks? This is where the tension lies, in the space between who we were and who we are becoming. It's a liminal space, filled with uncertainty, discomfort, and growth. And in that discomfort, something beautiful emerges. We begin to see the world not as it is, but as it could be. We recognize that the path ahead is not one of ease or convenience, but one of awakening to a deeper truth. You see, spiritual awakening isn't about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who we were always meant to be. It's about shedding the layers of conditioning and ego that have clouded our perception of ourselves and the world. It's not a quick fix or a fleeting experience. It's a lifelong journey that continues to unfold, revealing new layers of truth as we walk deeper into the unknown. And as we continue to walk, we encounter something profound: the beauty of being awake. Not in the sense of knowing everything, but in the realization that we are not separate from the world around us. We are part of something much larger, and that truth, that deep, eternal truth, begins to shape our lives in ways we never imagined. The more we awaken, the more we begin to understand that the world itself is an illusion. But within that illusion, we find a freedom we never thought possible. The experience of spiritual awakening often feels like stepping into a new world, one that feels both strangely familiar and completely foreign at the same time. You see things that were once invisible, hidden beneath layers of distraction and noise. Suddenly, the truth is right in front of you, and there's no denying it any longer. The world you once thought you knew no longer holds the same appeal. You realize that what you were chasing, success, recognition, material wealth, was never truly yours to begin with. Maslow's concept of self-transcendence doesn't just speak to personal growth. It speaks to a transformation of consciousness. This transformation is a shift in how we see ourselves and how we relate to the world. It's an evolution from seeking external validation to seeking inner truth. And this journey is not just a personal one, it's universal. When one person awakens, it creates a ripple effect. Their awakening challenges the system, disrupts the norms, and forces those around them to question the very fabric of their reality. But this process of awakening isn't without its struggles. In fact, it's often the most difficult thing a person can go through. At first, it may feel like a loss of relationships, loss of identity, loss of purpose. As you start to step away from the roles you once played, you might find yourself standing alone, facing the emptiness that was once filled with distractions and busyness. The world you thought you knew begins to dissolve, and in its place, there is a void. And it's in that void that the real work begins. Maslow once said, "The ability to be in the present moment is a major component of mental wellness." And this is where the true challenge of spiritual awakening lies, being present with the discomfort. When we wake up to the fact that the world is not what it seems, it's easy to feel lost. But this feeling of emptiness is not something to avoid or resist. It is, in fact, the very thing that leads to growth. The empty space is where the true self can emerge, free from the constraints of ego, free from the need for validation, and free from the pressures of society. At this stage, you may begin to question everything. You'll wonder, what is the point of it all? Why do we work so hard to fit into a society that doesn't truly understand us? Why do we sacrifice our peace for a dream that isn't even our own? And the answer, as difficult as it may be to accept, is that we've been conditioned to believe that these things matter. We've been trained to seek external rewards as a way of measuring our worth. But in doing so, we've lost touch with the one thing that actually gives our lives meaning, our own authenticity. Maslow's hierarchy of needs shows us that once our basic needs are met, we begin to seek belonging, esteem, and self-actualization. But beyond that, he suggests that there's something even deeper, something transcendent. This transcendence is not about escaping reality, it's about embracing it fully, in all its complexity. It's about acknowledging that there is no such thing as perfection, but that the pursuit of truth is its own reward. The true power of awakening comes when you stop seeking answers from external sources and start looking inward. When you stop measuring your worth by society's standards and start living according to your own truth. It's not an easy path. In fact, it's often the most difficult path a person can take. But it's also the most fulfilling. Because once you begin to live in alignment with your true self, you no longer feel the need to prove anything to anyone. You simply are. And in that simplicity, you find freedom. The process of self-transcendence is not about becoming someone else. It's about shedding the layers of conditioning and expectation that have clouded your true essence. It's about stripping away everything that isn't you and embracing the raw, unfiltered truth of who you are. And when you do that, you begin to experience life in a completely new way. The world around you may still be the same, but your perception of it has changed. You see beauty where you once saw chaos, peace where you once saw conflict, and meaning where you once saw emptiness. Maslow's work points to the importance of inner growth, but it also speaks to the responsibility we all carry in the process of awakening. Because as you wake up, you are also called to wake up others. Your transformation is not just for you, it's for the world. When you step into your authentic self, you create space for others to do the same. You become a beacon of truth in a world that desperately needs it. And though the journey may feel lonely at times, remember that you are not alone in your quest. Each step you take towards authenticity is a step towards the collective awakening of humanity. And so, the question remains, what are you willing to let go of in order to awaken to your true self? What beliefs, what attachments, what fears are you ready to release in order to step fully into your power? The journey of self-transcendence is not one of easy answers or quick fixes. It's a lifelong process, one that requires patience, courage, and a willingness to face the uncomfortable truth of who we are. But it is also the most powerful journey we can undertake because, in the end, the only thing that truly matters is living in alignment with the truth of our being. This shift in perception is what Abraham Maslow was pointing to when he described the concept of self-transcendence. It's the point at which an individual reaches beyond the confines of self-actualization and moves into a space of profound connection with something larger than themselves. But this journey is not linear. It's often full of contradictions, challenges, and moments of deep uncertainty. One of the most striking realizations for those who awaken is the sense of disconnection from the very systems they once relied on. Society has an unwritten contract: succeed, conform, and fit in. But as you start to awaken spiritually, you begin to see how limiting this contract truly is. You realize that success, at least in the way it is often defined by the world, isn't actually fulfilling. You may have once believed that achieving a certain status or acquiring wealth would lead to happiness. But as you evolve, you start to feel that something essential is missing. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, while valuable in its exploration of human motivation, does not account for the deep spiritual hunger that exists within us as we meet our basic needs and fulfill our desires for esteem and success. There's a deeper yearning that can't be satisfied by external achievements. This yearning calls us to transcend our ego and connect with a higher purpose, one that is not defined by societal measures of success, but by something far more profound. It's at this point that we face the greatest challenge of awakening: detachment. To fully awaken, we must let go of everything we thought we knew about the world, our relationships, and ourselves. This isn't a rejection of the world. It's a recognition that the world we see is limited and often built on illusions. Once we see through these illusions, we can no longer participate in them in the same way. The need for validation, the chase for success, the desire to belong, these external markers of worth begin to lose their grip on us. We start to realize that true fulfillment doesn't come from what we achieve or accumulate, but from who we are and how we live in alignment with our true nature. This awakening isn't easy. In fact, it often feels like a deep loss. When we detach from the world's expectations, we feel as though we are losing part of ourselves, part of our identity, our sense of purpose, and our place in the world. But what's actually happening is not loss, but liberation. We are shedding the layers of conditioning and false identity that have kept us stuck in a cycle of seeking approval from others. We are making space for our authentic selves to emerge. Maslow's idea of self-transcendence calls for this very liberation. It's not enough to simply achieve self-actualization. We must transcend it. We must go beyond the limited identity we've created for ourselves and connect with something greater. This is where the deepest transformation happens, and it often comes at the cost of discomfort and uncertainty. But it's also where we find true peace, the peace that comes not from external achievements, but from the realization that we are already whole. As you walk this path, you may encounter moments of doubt, fear, and loneliness. You may wonder if you're on the right track or if you've made a mistake in stepping away from the expectations of the world. But these feelings are not signs that you're failing. They are part of the process of transformation. Spiritual awakening is not about being free from fear. It's about embracing fear and moving through it with awareness and courage. It's about facing the unknown and trusting that even in the darkness, there is a greater truth waiting to be uncovered. The truth is that awakening is not a destination. It's a journey that unfolds over time, often in unexpected ways. And as you continue on this journey, you will find that the world you once thought you knew no longer holds the same power over you. You will find that the things you once sought, validation, success, material wealth, no longer have the same hold. And in their place, you will discover a new sense of purpose, one that is not defined by the expectations of others, but by your own inner truth. As you transcend the limits of your ego and align with your true self, you will begin to experience a deep sense of freedom. You will no longer be bound by the need to fit in, to conform, or to live up to society's standards. Instead, you will live from a place of authenticity, knowing that your worth is not determined by external factors, but by the love and acceptance you give yourself. You will find peace in knowing that you are already enough, just as you are. In this space of freedom, you begin to realize that your awakening is not just for you, it's for the world. The more you step into your true self, the more you create space for others to do the same. Your awakening becomes a beacon, shining light on the path for others to follow. And in this way, the journey of self-transcendence becomes not just a personal transformation, but a collective one. When one person awakens, it ripples out, touching the lives of others and inspiring them to awaken as well. Awakening, at its core, is about the shedding of false identities and the embracing of one's authentic self. It is a process of rediscovery, reconnecting with the essence of who we truly are beneath the layers of conditioning and societal expectations. The challenge, however, is that this process often feels like a paradox. The more we awaken, the more disconnected we may feel from the world around us. The truth is that awakening requires us to embrace a kind of solitude, not the kind of isolation that comes from loneliness or disconnection, but the solitude that comes from standing in our own truth, free from the need for validation. It's in this solitude that we discover our true power. This power isn't about control or domination. It's about self-awareness and alignment with our deepest values. It's about standing firm in the knowledge that we are enough, regardless of what the world says we should be. In many ways, this journey mirrors Maslow's idea of self-actualization, but with an added layer of complexity. Self-actualization, in Maslow's terms, is the realization of one's fullest potential, the achievement of personal growth, creativity, and purpose. But beyond this, self-transcendence invites us to go even further, to release the ego entirely, to let go of the need to define ourselves by our achievements or the roles we play in the world. It is about moving beyond the self and connecting with something greater, something universal. But as we begin to move into this space of self-transcendence, we often encounter resistance. It's natural to resist change, especially when the change threatens to dismantle the very foundation of our identity. After all, who are we without our roles, our status, our external validation? The truth is that we are more than these things. We are the essence that exists beneath all the layers. We are the observer, the experiencer, the witness to the unfolding of life. And when we connect with this deeper part of ourselves, we begin to see the world in a new light. Maslow recognized that once we transcend the self, we are able to connect with others in a more meaningful way. When we are no longer bound by the need to compete or compare, we are free to experience authentic connection. This is what true belonging looks like, not the superficial belonging that comes from fitting into a group, but the deep sense of connection that arises when we are fully ourselves, unapologetically and without reservation. But this is where the paradox deepens. As we awaken and become more connected to our true selves, we often find that we must also detach from the world we once knew. The relationships, the systems, the expectations, all of it begins to fade away as we step into the truth of who we are. And in that space of detachment, we face a question that is both liberating and terrifying. What happens when we no longer need to prove ourselves? What happens when the need to fit in, to be seen, to be recognized, disappears? The answer, I believe, is freedom, true freedom. The freedom to be, to exist without the need for approval or validation. The freedom to live life on our own terms, not dictated by external forces or societal pressure. This freedom, however, comes at a price. It requires us to let go of the security of the familiar, to step into the unknown, and to trust that the path we are walking is the one that will lead us to the truth. Maslow's idea of self-transcendence also implies a shift in how we experience life. It's not about transcending the world itself, but transcending our relationship to it. We are not escaping reality. We are simply seeing it for what it truly is. And when we see the world with clear eyes, we begin to see our role within it differently. We understand that we are not separate from the world, but an integral part of it. We are connected to everything and everyone, and our actions, however small, ripple out and affect the whole. This realization that we are part of something greater, something interconnected, is the essence of awakening. It's the moment when we stop seeing ourselves as isolated individuals and begin to understand that our lives are part of a much larger narrative. And in this understanding, we find our true purpose. Not a purpose defined by society's expectations, but a purpose that comes from within, from the deepest parts of our soul. And so, the journey continues. With each step, we shed more of the illusions that have kept us bound to the world's expectations. We release the need for external validation and step into a space of deep authenticity. The more we awaken, the more we realize that the true path is not one of success or failure, but of being, simply being who we are meant to be. In this space of being, we find peace. Not the peace that comes from avoiding conflict, but the peace that comes from embracing life in its full complexity. We no longer need to chase after something outside of ourselves because we recognize that everything we need is already within. And as we continue on this path, we invite others to walk with us. Our awakening becomes a beacon, guiding others toward their own truths, their own liberation. When a person reaches the deeper stages of awakening, something profound begins to happen. The world no longer feels like a place to conquer or escape, but a mirror reflecting their inner state. Every situation, every challenge, every relationship becomes a teacher. Abraham Maslow observed that self-transcendent individuals begin to perceive life as sacred, not because it is perfect, but because it is real. They stop searching for constant pleasure or validation and begin to find meaning in everything, even in pain, loss, and uncertainty. This is where awakening takes its most paradoxical form. You discover that enlightenment isn't about escaping suffering, it's about transforming your relationship with it. You learn that pain, rather than being a sign of failure, is often a doorway to deeper wisdom. The discomfort that once pushed you toward distraction now becomes an invitation to awareness. You stop running from your shadows and start listening to them. This is where psychology and spirituality meet, in the acceptance of the whole self, light and dark, conscious and unconscious. Maslow referred to this as the plateau experience. Unlike the peak experiences he described earlier, those sudden, ecstatic moments of transcendence, the plateau is calm, grounded, and enduring. It's the quiet realization that everything is connected. You no longer need the fireworks of revelation to know that life is sacred. You simply feel it in the ordinary moments, in the sound of the wind, in the rhythm of your breath, in the quiet presence of another soul who sees you as you are. It's not a state of euphoria, but of deep, abiding peace. This state of being marks a turning point in the awakening process. You begin to see that the goal was never to separate yourself from the world, but to engage with it from a higher state of consciousness, to live not as a product of conditioning, but as an expression of truth. You realize that the true revolution is internal. It's not about changing the system by force, but transforming consciousness through awareness. And when that awareness spreads, the world inevitably changes. But this level of awareness carries a responsibility. Once you see, you cannot unsee. Once you awaken, you cannot return to ignorance. The world's suffering becomes your concern. Not because you want to fix it all, but because you now understand that it's part of you. You begin to live with compassion, not the sentimental kind that pities others, but the active, grounded compassion that comes from understanding that every being is walking the same path of evolution, just at different stages. You become less judgmental, more patient, more forgiving. You no longer see us versus them. You see humanity as one organism, learning, failing, growing. This is why awakened individuals often step away from the noise of society. It's not withdrawal, it's recalibration. The awakened person needs silence to integrate, to listen, to understand. In the quiet, they align their actions with their values. They no longer live reactively, but intentionally. And when they do return to the world, they bring with them something rare. A consciousness that radiates calm amid chaos, truth amid confusion. These are the individuals who silently shift the collective frequency, not through force, but through presence. Maslow once said that the fully realized person lives in a state of continual wonder and gratitude. That doesn't mean they are naive or blind to the world's flaws. It means they have learned to hold paradox, to see both beauty and suffering, chaos and order, without losing faith in the inherent goodness of existence. This capacity to hold paradox is the hallmark of mature consciousness. It's what allows us to live in the world without being consumed by it. For those walking this path, there will still be moments of doubt, fatigue, even despair. Awakening doesn't make us immune to human emotions. It deepens them. We feel more, not less. But we learn to meet those feelings with awareness instead of resistance. Every wave of emotion becomes another opportunity to practice presence. And over time, we find that peace isn't the absence of storms, but the I within them. If you've made it this far, if you've felt that quiet detachment from the noise of modern life, that longing for something deeper, then understand this: you're not disappearing from the world. You're returning to yourself. The old identity is fading so that something greater can emerge. A consciousness that is free, whole, and aligned with truth. That is not disappearance, it is evolution. The world may not understand this transformation yet. It may label it as isolation, rebellion, or even madness. But history shows that every leap in human consciousness began with those willing to step away from the crowd. What looks like absence is often the space required for something new to be born. What looks like silence is the beginning of wisdom. And what looks like separation is, in truth, the deepest form of unity. So when people ask, why are the awakened disappearing from society? The answer is simple: they are not disappearing. They are awakening into a new form of existence, one not defined by the noise of the collective, but by the harmony of the soul. They are learning to live from the inside out, guided by intuition, anchored in truth, and devoted to the quiet revolution of consciousness. And if you feel that call too, if you sense that something inside you is ready to break free, then trust it. You're not alone. You are part of a silent movement, an invisible evolution that is reshaping humanity from within. The disappearance is only the beginning. The return will change everything. The disappearance of spiritually awakened individuals from society is not an ending, it's a transformation. It's a movement away from illusion and toward truth, from distraction toward awareness. What appears to be retreat is actually a return to presence, authenticity, and meaning. Abraham Maslow once wrote that what one can be, one must be. It's an inner imperative of the soul, the call to live in alignment with our highest nature. For the awakened, this call becomes impossible to ignore. In the beginning, the journey may feel like exile. The world that once seemed full of color now feels pale, shallow, even absurd. The conversations that once entertained now ring hollow. The ambitions that once motivated now seem meaningless. This is not depression, it's disillusionment, the breaking of an illusion. It's the moment the soul refuses to settle for imitation life. What dies here is not joy, but dependence on false joy. And in its place, something pure begins to emerge. Quiet, steady, real. Maslow understood this as the process of integration. When the individual no longer divides life into sacred and profane, work and rest, spirit and body, everything becomes part of the same whole. The awakened no longer seek meaning, they embody it. They live from a place of deep congruence between what they believe and how they act. Their values are no longer borrowed from culture or religion. They arise naturally from within, as expressions of the truth they have discovered. But such alignment has a cost. To live authentically in an inauthentic world means to stand alone, at least for a time. The awakened learn to walk through solitude without fear. They no longer chase crowds or applause. They understand that stillness is their sanctuary. And in that stillness, they find what society could never give them, a peace that does not depend on circumstance. They begin to experience what Maslow called the meta-motivation, the drive not for personal gain, but for service, beauty, truth, and wholeness. When a person reaches this state, they no longer measure success by the metrics of society, money, power, fame, but by their capacity for presence, compassion, and love. They become what Maslow referred to as transcenders, individuals who see reality more clearly because they are no longer filtered through ego or fear. To them, every act, from tending a garden to speaking a kind word, becomes sacred. They move through the world quietly but leave a profound impact. Their disappearance from society is not absence, it's elevation. Yet the story does not end in solitude. As consciousness expands, the awakened begin to return, not as participants in the old systems, but as silent reformers of consciousness. They teach not through preaching, but through being. Their peace becomes contagious. Their authenticity challenges the lies others live. Their compassion becomes a mirror that invites others to awaken. In time, this quiet revolution of awareness begins to reshape the very structures that once alienated them. And though few may notice it happening, the transformation is already underway. This is the paradox of spiritual evolution. To truly belong to humanity, we must first learn to stand apart from it. Only by stepping out of the collective trance can we see it clearly enough to love it. And this love, not idealized or naive, but grounded in truth, is what the world most desperately needs. The awakened don't abandon society out of contempt. They step away to remember, to realign, to rebuild from a place of clarity. They are the invisible architects of the future. You see, the disappearance of the awakened is not a loss to humanity. It is humanity's preparation for rebirth. As more people awaken, the old systems of domination and distraction begin to crumble. The structures that fed on fear lose their power. A new order begins to form, not imposed from above, but arising organically from within each conscious being. It is a world not built on control, but on awareness. Not on scarcity, but on connection. Not on competition, but on cooperation. Maslow believed that the ultimate purpose of psychology was to help human beings become fully human, not in the limited, conditioned sense, but in the divine sense. To live as beings of love, creativity, and consciousness. To realize that the sacred is not elsewhere, it is here, in the ordinary, in the now. This realization is the heart of awakening. It's what every soul, consciously or not, is longing for. So if you find yourself feeling out of place in this world, if you feel the urge to withdraw, to seek silence, to question everything, don't resist it. You are not disappearing. You are transforming. You are entering the next phase of human evolution. The noise of society may no longer resonate with you because you've outgrown it. Your silence is not emptiness, it's gestation. Something new is being born in you. A clarity, a depth, a peace that the world desperately needs. And when the time is right, you will return, not to the same world you left, but to one that your awakening has quietly helped to transform. Because every awakened soul contributes to the collective evolution of consciousness, whether they speak or remain silent. You are not separate from the world you're awakening from. You are its mirror, its medicine, its hope. So remember, the disappearance of the awakened is not the end of humanity, it's the beginning of its healing. The quieter you become, the louder your truth echoes in the collective. The more you let go, the more the world finds balance through you. You are not vanishing, you are becoming. And perhaps that's the secret Maslow was pointing to all along, that the highest form of self isn't the one that stands above the world, but the one that stands with it, fully.